So this is me in 2018. I had just got married. I just bought my first house. I had a career that I absolutely loved. So you would think that I would be happy. I was completely miserable. I couldn't do it anymore. I was left with all these questions and just feeling really lost. What if I could use planning and creativity to navigate my way to a more meaningful and fulfilling life? And I shared the whole journey on YouTube. In 2021, Plan, Inspire, Create was born. And I kind of took what I'd learned and tried to pass it on to other people. In October 2023, I actually rebranded from Plan, Inspire, Create to Sunshine Lane. I've learned a hell of a lot over this time, and I really want to stop and think about 5 years on, where am I now and what has changed from a pretty bleak picture I painted in 2018. I now have a much clearer idea of who I am, and I feel happy with the person I've got to know. And so I guess this is a different kind of small business video in that I wanted to recognise a story of how running a small business can change you as a person and impact all areas of your life. Hi everyone, and welcome to a brand new video where I'm going to be sharing something a little bit different this week. I want to talk all about how launching my small business and working on it over the last 4 years has really helped me reach a happier and healthier place in my life. And I want to take you through the journey of why I started the business and how it's evolved and what I've learned about myself and how I've grown along the way, because I think it's interesting to hear people's journeys and their kind of change and growth along the way, whether you haven't even started your small business yet and it's just an idea in your mind, or you're well along the journey, or somewhere in between. There'll be things you can relate to, there'll be questions answered. I think it's interesting to get people's perspectives and experiences and see how it might be different or similar to your own and what you can learn from it. So that's what we're going to do today. If you haven't come across my channel before, my name is Emma and I run Sunshine Lane, which is a stationery and gift shop which is focused around creating goodies related to self-care and positivity. Though that wasn't always strictly the case, but we're going to get onto that. So before I talk about how the business has evolved, I wanted to start by talking about where I was at the beginning and how Sunshine Lane came to be. So this is me in 2018. I had just got married. I just bought my first house. I had a career that I absolutely loved, that I'd worked really hard for. I'd gone back to uni to do a master's in social work. I'd retrained as a social worker and I'd qualified in the 2017. I'd moved back closer to my family and I was working as a social worker with children with disabilities, and it was a job that I really felt passionate about and that I loved. So you would think with those three things, career I love, newly married, bought my first house, that I would be happy. But in fact, I was completely miserable. Things were not going well for me. My physical and mental health had really taken a decline and was still on the decline. I had been diagnosed with fibromyalgia in the March of 2018, which is a chronic pain condition which causes widespread pain, fatigue, a whole host of weird and wonderful sensory symptoms, all kinds of symptoms, but the main ones being widespread pain and fatigue. And the main way of managing it is to pace yourself, which in a fast-paced job like social work isn't necessarily very easy to do. Plus, stress is a major trigger, and obviously it's a very stressful job, very emotionally draining. So it was all a bit of a pressure cooker. During my master's, things had taken a downward turn quite quickly, and there's no such thing as kind of sick leave. You just have to push through and do it. And things had kind of gone down. I'd started my job and really wasn't putting myself first. I think when you're in a job like social work, you think that however you're feeling, the people that you're working to support must be feeling worse, and therefore you must push through, because if you don't go to work, there's staff shortages, who's going to help those people, etc. And so there's nothing pressure I was putting on myself really. And on top of that, I wasn't in the greatest team. It wasn't very supportive environment, and I was experiencing some discrimination related to my disability. So pop all that together And the kind of additional stress of it all was just leading to my physical and mental health declining more. And it was just this perfect storm where things were getting worse and worse. So I had 5 weeks off when I got married and went on honeymoon. It was meant to be 4, but I actually ended up with a week off sick when I got back. And as soon as I went back, I kind of had this feeling like I can't do this anymore. I'd been away long enough for it to sink in what daily life should be like and could be like. And I then had to jump back into the frying pan and get on with it. And I really, really struggled. And I just thought this shouldn't be the way. Between then and 2019, I found out that I'm also autistic. I didn't really feel comfortable sharing that at work because I was already facing discrimination about my physical health. And it just rapidly went downhill to the point where my body kind of took the decision out of my hands. I physically was not able to go on with it. I'd been having some really quite scary symptoms, periods of confusion and all sorts of things. So I knew I had to hand my notice in and that I couldn't do it anymore. And I was supposed to work a 3-month notice, but my body just decided after 2 weeks that enough was enough. I collapsed at home and I didn't end up going back to work out the rest of my notice. And now the sad bit is almost over. This is not a personal therapy session on YouTube. I want to reassure you of that. But I just kind of wanted to set the scene of like where my mind was. And then coming out of social work, which had kind of been my whole life for the past like previous 4 years, as well as having a big period of recovery ahead of me in terms of sorting out my physical and mental health and getting to a stronger place, I was left with all these questions and just feeling really lost. Like, I knew that I didn't want to go back to social work. The whole situation just put me off to the point where I felt this just huge anxiety thinking about having to go back and do it again in case I ended up in a similar situation. And so if I wasn't going to be a social worker, what was I going to be? And I had no idea where to even start with that question. So if I'm not doing that, how am I going to spend my time? And then having found out I was autistic, I'd really realised that I didn't have a very firm sense of like who I was as a person. What do I enjoy? What do I like doing? What do I not like doing? What do I really want out of life long term? I'd spent so many years just trying to fit in with everyone else around me and not let them see that I was different, that I wasn't really in tune with what it was that brought me joy. And so I knew that I had to strip it all back and really go back to basics, and that I wanted that to be a kind of core part of my recovery period, really. And so eventually I came to this point where I thought to myself, what if I could use planning and creativity to navigate my way to a more meaningful and fulfilling life? It's something that's always helped me in the past. Things like planning, journaling. I knew that I'd found enjoyment in some creative hobbies over the years. And so why not fall back on a kind of trusted favourite and use my love of planning and stationery, journaling, that kind of thing, to be the foundation of managing this recovery period. So that's what I decided to do. So this is really how I got started. And I shared the whole journey on YouTube. So right back to the beginning, at the very, very end of 2019, I started my YouTube channel, and I started it with a series of videos looking at my vision for my life and what I might want it to look like in the future, and then breaking that down into goals I could work on, individual projects, actions, habits. I will talk a little bit more in detail about that later in the video, about how I did that. But I decided basically to share this whole journey on YouTube with the thinking that maybe a couple of people might see it and they might resonate with it, and they might feel less alone with feeling lost and not sure what direction to take next. So that's what I did. And the way I kind of used my planners and what approach I took was to use my planners to create structure in my days and my weeks, because I had such open-ended periods of time that I'd not had before. I was used to being in employment. I've been in employment since I was 15 in some form. It's the first time in my life I hadn't been, and I was 31 at this point. Yeah, about that. And I don't work well without structure. I need a structure for myself, or I just don't really do anything. So I use my planners to create structure in my week and also make sure that I was having a balance of activities. And I did this in conjunction with my health planner, which was something that I really focused on being related to my mental and physical recovery. So as part of that, I would try and plan across my weeks and months a balance of activities that included things to get me socialising with other people, because I was suddenly cut off from my work friends. I'd moved to a new area but had been travelling elsewhere for work, so I didn't really know anyone locally. I was quite isolated. I was trying to understand what it meant to be autistic, what it meant to have fibromyalgia, so there were things about learning about myself in there that were more like just activities by myself. I wanted to make sure I was getting some physical exercise, even if in the beginning that started by just getting moving in some form. And then also making sure I was working on my emotional well-being. So whether that was attending therapy, attending groups, reaching out to people in similar situations to me for support, and also just personal reflection. So I wanted to make sure that I was getting a balance of those things, and it really encouraged me to seek out different things I could connect with, go to them on a regular basis, and then I kind of used my other planners and things to fit around that and set goals for myself and little targets to work towards to keep me motivated. And like I said, I kept sharing these along the way. I also did a lot of journaling on a variety of different topics, both using kind of journaling prompts and questions and just free writing about my feelings. That really helped me connect with how I was feeling. And I enjoy writing in general, so I was blogging about what it meant to be autistic. I did a lot of writing in that time, and it was something that really helped me to express myself and make sense of my feelings, and I think that is a really powerful thing with journaling. And then creativity. So during this time, I started digital drawing. Now, I'm somebody who, unbeknownst to me, had loved drawing before I went to school. I don't remember that, but my mum has told me that since. But I have a very vivid memory of like being told pretty early on in school that a piece of artwork I'd done was rubbish. And I just like shut down from that point, and when I was made to do any kind of art, I just felt like, oh, it's not going to be as good as other people's, and I don't want to have to do this, and had a lot of issues with perfectionism, and you know, if it wasn't going to be perfect, I didn't want to try because I was just scared to fail. So I decided that I was going to embrace this creative journey of just starting to create things to enjoy the process of creating, and it doesn't really matter what the end result looks like, which is a very new like philosophy for me, a very new thing to do. And I really loved it. I was doing a lot of things with kind of positive messages and just things to kind of cheer me up and uplift me. I found it very therapeutic. And it was really fun to learn a new skill. Now, obviously my story is very specific, but I think no matter what your story is, I think there are things we can all relate on. There are times where we've all felt lost. We're not sure what direction to turn next. We're not sure how to manage these overwhelming feelings that we've got, the overwhelming situations that we're in, and things feel too big to unpick, or the hill feels too big to climb, and you're just not really sure how to approach it. And in that moment, it can feel like you're the only person in the world experiencing that. However, through sharing my journey on YouTube, I was really surprised how many people reached out to me, left a comment, sent a private message saying, I really resonated with what you said about this. And their story might have been completely different, but they resonated with the feelings I was going through. And I started to realise more and more just how much we do all have in common, even if our stories look different on the surface. And I started to think about the things I'd been creating for me and whether there would be a way to share those things with other people, because I was seeing that they could have a benefit to others like they'd had a benefit to me, whether it was things with the uplifting messages, the planner inserts I did originally related to my health and well-being. There were lots of different things that I thought these could really benefit other people, and could I turn this into a business and that become the thing that I now focus on employment-wise, but also in filling my time. If you've started your own small business, I think there are things that a lot of small business owners have in common, regardless of the story they had before and what led them to that point. I think for a lot of people, they don't want the restrictions that come with traditional employment. They want to be able to seek employment in a way that fits around them and their lifestyle and their responsibilities. They want to live in a different way, and I certainly did. You want more control over your own life. I was terrified at the thought of having to return to traditional employment and perform when someone told me I needed to, because that's not necessarily how my body worked at that time. And I still have limitations with that now that I work around. But when you're in traditional employment, you have to perform when someone says perform, and you just don't have that same flexibility. And I think a lot of people want to be able to balance work with other things. So whether that's family, whether it's some form of health condition, whether it's just having a better work-life balance in general, having your own business allows you to do that. And so more and more I was thinking, if this could be successful, this is worth pursuing and seeing if this could go somewhere, because it's a potential way I could get myself back into employment without feeling like there was such a risk to my physical and mental health declining again after I'd worked so hard to build myself up over that time. So that is what I did, but I didn't rush straight into it. I think a really common mistake with goal setting is rushing to set goals without having a clear vision of what you want your life to look like, what you want the big picture to look like. And so I really kind of stepped back and thought about, how do I want my life to look in general moving forwards, and where could work sit within that, rather than having to shoehorn everything else in around employment. Because if you're starting your own business, you don't have to work that way anymore. So I really wanted to get on the right footing from the start. And I also really wanted to start with the right mindset. So things that I didn't want and I made a conscious effort not to do was to have too much focus on what obstacles might be in the way, why something might not work. Things can be worked around, and so I wanted to think more from a point of like opportunity and what could be achieved, rather than kind of limiting myself in a little box. I didn't want to be thinking it's not the right time yet, or it'll never be the right time. Like I said before about perfectionism and holding myself back from things, I purposely wanted to push against that. And similarly with limiting beliefs, I didn't want negative self-talk to get in the way of me doing. And so I purposely spent time thinking about what are the negative thoughts that are popping up about why I won't be able to do this, and let me journal about it and talk myself round and remind myself of the reasons why those negative thoughts that are coming up, they're not actually true. It's just anxiety popping up annoying little messages that aren't even really real. So let's logic our way around them, and what evidence can we use to show yourself that that's not true? Actually, you've achieved this. There's no reason why you can't do it. And another big one was that I wanted to make sure any goals I set weren't about what other people expected me to be doing or what I thought would make other people happy, because I had been very guilty of this all the way through my life. Like I said, being autistic, well, undiagnosed autistic, and just trying to fit in with other people. And so I wanted to make sure that this is something that was for me and that I wasn't getting swept up again in any kind of external influence. I set up myself with a little goal setting method that I then utilised over the next few years, and it has been so useful for me. So like I said, firstly, really stepping back and looking at that big picture, and I looked at what I wanted my life to look like across 8 areas. So it was physical health, emotional health, finance, social, relationships, home and family, testing myself now, employment, beliefs and values, purpose, I think is the last one. Have I said finance? Oh, hobbies. Hobbies and interests. So I was making sure that my vision included all different aspects of my well-being, that things weren't being sidelined for either employment to be at the focus or health to be at the focus or fun to be at the focus. There needed to be some sort of balance, and it didn't have to be exactly equal across the board because we can't be working on everything at once. But ultimately, what do I want the big picture of my life to look like? So once I had that, I set myself 2 or 3 goals each time, and I did it for a 90-day period. And I just set a goal that I thought was achievable to get to by the end of the 90-day period. So I don't have to do it all at once. I'm not going to get to my vision this time. That's way off. But I'm just taking steps to get there. And then I'd come up with a couple of projects for each goal to work on and break them down into the individual actions that I needed to do. So once I'd got to that point, all I had to do was just tick off the to-do list. And by the end of the 90 days, I'd realised actually I'd made a big jump from where I was at the beginning, and it felt a lot more simple sitting down and doing all that planning up front and then just doing the day-to-day of the lists and working my way forward. And so I did that, and in 2021 Plan, Inspire, Create was born, which was my original business name. And it was the name that I'd already had for my YouTube channel. So when I opened my Etsy shop in 2021, it had the same name, and I started selling planner inserts, stickers, stationery items, art prints, that kind of thing. And it was all very much focused around health and well-being and self-care. And I came up with a little tagline, which was helping people live happier and healthier through planning and creativity, which is really what I had been doing myself. And I kind of took what I'd learned and tried to pass it on to other people and share that knowledge with other people and create things that would help people have a little shortcut in their journey rather than having to start right from the beginning of where I was. Etsy was a great platform for starting my small business because Etsy is essentially a search engine. It's a place people will go if they are looking for products but they don't know who to buy them from. And so it's a great place to start when you haven't got your own customer base, because your products can be there in the marketplace for people to find you. So if you're thinking about setting up a business for the first time, or you are already selling on Etsy, I wanted to introduce the sponsor of this next segment of the video, which is Everb, which if Everb had existed at the time I started my Etsy shop, it would have helped me launch my shop in such a better way and with so much more confidence. So I really want to share it with you because I still sell on Etsy, and Everb has really been helping me grow over there. Everb is a game changer for Etsy sellers. Trying to figure out what to sell and how to make it sell can feel like a never-ending puzzle, but having Everb is like having a trusty sidekick that helps you find the answers. It shows you what's popular, what people are searching for, and even gives you a heads up on what your competitors are doing. And the best part is the Everb Chrome extension puts all that information right at your fingertips as you're searching through Etsy, so you can stop the guesswork and just focus on making data-driven decisions. So as you sign into Everb, you link it with your Etsy account. This is the easiest thing to do. And then every time you're on Etsy, this toolbar will appear on the left-hand side, which is really handy. It means you haven't got to go backwards and forwards between different websites when you're carrying out your product research. So if you go to that left-hand menu, you'll see there is a list of research tools. I clicked on Shop Analyze, and I actually typed in one of the names of the shops that had come up a lot when I was looking at the A4 desk pads, which was Once Upon a Tuesday, and it brought up all their products and analysed all their listings, which were the most popular, how much revenue they were making from each one. And something surprising was actually that their wall planners were generating the most revenue, which I wasn't sure how much people used wall planners, and it's not something I'd considered adding to my shop before, but knowing that, perhaps it's something I could consider in the future when I'm putting collections together, especially as we're at that time where we're getting into the autumn and people are thinking of planners for 2025. Having looked at that, I clicked on the tag analyzer tab and it showed all the tags that were bringing search to their shop, and I made a note of any that I felt were relevant. So feeling like I'd got a good selection, I actually started setting up the listing on Etsy, and I went down to the tags section and I just typed my list into here and put all those tags into this section. Feeling pretty good that this time it was actually based off some research and not plucking things out of my head and hoping for the best, which is my usual strategy. I mean, we've all done it, we all do it, but it just made me feel a bit better to think that I was actually doing these listings based on some research. One thing to remember is you don't just want to put your tags in here, leave them there and not do anything else. You want to try and weave some of these key phrases into your title and description in a way that feels natural to read, because the more places they appear, the more likely it is that Etsy is going to rank you in search for that keyword. You're going to appear higher and it's more likely a customer is going to find you and click on your listing. So that is something I am going to come back and do. If you want to sign up to Everb and give it a try for yourself, they actually have a free plan that is free forever, which has some limits on the amount of keyword research you can do in one go, but it can give you a lot of information that can be helpful in bringing people to your Etsy shop and give you a chance to try it for free and see how you get on with it. So if you want to give Everb a try for yourself, I'd love it if you could click the link in the description below to let them know that I sent you over to say hi, and let me know how you get on with it and whether you notice any change in your Etsy analytics. Thank you so much to Everb for sponsoring that segment of the video. It's so amazing to have tools available to help you get sales, because I think especially in the early days of running your business, it really does help boost your confidence. I remember when I launched my shop, it was actually during one of Emily Harvey's eHearts markets, one of her online markets, and I remember my very first order that I got. It was from the lovely Claire at OK Doodle, and I still remember it to this day. I was so excited when this order came through, and I knew Claire and I knew Claire's shop, and I was so excited it was from Claire. And I remember she ordered some sticker sheets. I still remember it. She ordered some notes to self stickers, and I'm sure she ordered some little pill stickers with little faces on, like little medication stickers. And it just gave me a confidence boost that my shop had got its first order from somebody who wasn't like my mom. I was so chuffed. I was honestly so chuffed. And it's just gone on from there and slowly built more and more and more. So I had the shop side, and then I had the YouTube side where I would carry on sharing content around planning and organisation and how I was using planning to reach my goals, had a lot of goal setting stuff, and then I did share some behind the scenes of my business. Now the problem with me is, and I think a lot of small business owners can probably relate, I had so many ideas and so many things that I wanted to do, and I quickly realised, like, you cannot do them all at once. Like I said before, your goals can't get you to where you need to be in one go, and they don't have to. It's better to just recognise that you are taking consistent, steady steps towards that end vision, and you can see and feel the progress. Now for me, with my health, particularly in the beginning, I just felt like I couldn't go anywhere near as quick as I saw other small business owners doing, and I needed a lot more rest periods, and I just couldn't do things at the same pace, and I found that incredibly frustrating. And it was very easy for that negative self-talk to creep back in, and for me to think that I was a failure compared to other people because I just couldn't work at the same pace. Or I was comparing somebody's journey 5 years in to mine in the first year, and it wasn't really a fair comparison. So I really had to recognise that and just keep reminding myself that slow and steady wins the race, and focus on making consistent steps forward as opposed to huge leaps, burning myself out, all those steps back, which is kind of the pattern I'd been in previously. I'd really wanted to do it all, but I just had to learn to prioritize and think, what are the most important things now? What are the most important steps now? And I can do all the things, I just can't do them all at once. So really learning to prioritize and not get disheartened that other things I wanted to do hadn't yet been achieved was something that I had to work really hard to learn, and still do. I still get frustrated because, I don't know, someone will make an offhand comment to me like, oh, you mentioned about this idea before, whatever happened to that? And I think, yeah, I haven't done that. And then I have to remind myself, yeah, of course you haven't done that yet. You just haven't done it yet. That's fine, it's still on the list. But there are only so many things you can do in one go. It's fine. As long as I keep taking those steps forward is all that really matters. So that is what I did. And between 2021 to 2024, where we are now, I've just focused on taking those steady steps. So in the first year, I opened my Etsy shop. I also launched a Patreon community in that time. I think only 3 months after I launched my shop, which is crazy. And I took everything I'd learned about my goal setting method and I put it into my own goal setting planner, which was a 90-day goals planner. And that was something that I put a lot of work into. And I was really pleased with how things were going that year. And just learning to do so many new things for the first time. So in 2022, I really kind of branched out in terms of what I was doing. So I started attending in-person planner events. I took my shop to my first planner event. I also did a talk at that event. And I was really pleased with how that went and getting the chance to meet customers in person and people who were my kind of customers, my kind of audience. And I knew from then on that I wanted to do more of that. I also launched my own Shopify store so I could have my own shop on my own website for repeat customers that I'd built up. I still kept my Etsy store and new customers could find me on Etsy, but my existing customers knew to shop direct. And it meant that I was getting more of a return on those sales, and it just made everything tidier in terms of being able to have my shop and my website together and it all be integrated. I secured my first stockist, which was very exciting. So I had my products stocked in an in-person shop for the first time, Design 44 in Trentham Gardens, that I am still in to this day. I'm incredibly grateful for them, and it was just such like a pinch me moment to see my products in an actual shop. And then I released an advent calendar which had 24 days of self-care stationery throughout the month of December. So that was a huge undertaking to create all those items and to have something to unwrap every day. The packaging, the way it was put together, so many different types of products I'd not done before. It was a massive project. Now, it was also not a great seller, but I was very glad I did it because it really influenced the direction I took in 2023, which was I decided to refocus on self-care and positivity. It was such a core part of why I started Plan, Inspire, Create in the first place. But along that first year or so of running my shop, I got very swept up in what other similar shop owners were doing and what I felt I needed to have in my product offering in order to be doing it properly. And I kind of lost a little bit of what made me me and what I was offering that was maybe a little bit different to others. And doing the advent calendar, even though it wasn't a huge success financially, I really realised how much those were the products that I loved creating and seeing everything have positive messages behind it. And I knew that that's what I wanted to do moving forward. So I had a big sale where I sold off everything that wasn't related to self-care or positive messaging. And from then on, those were the only collections I released. So I worked hard on releasing a lot of new collections that year because I'd essentially retired a lot of products and I needed a core kind of product offering to beef up my shop again. So I was working really hard on new product collections. I also carried on expanding the wholesale side of my business, trying to get my products in more shops in front of more people. I carried on attending in-person events. I did, I think, 3 or 4 events in 2023. And then I also moved to my current studio that I'm in now that I love creating in. And in October 2023, I actually rebranded from Plan, Inspire, Create to Sunshine Lane, which was a huge step, but I think really brought everything together in terms of the feelings that I want people to have when they kind of interact with my products and my content and stuff. I felt like the name of Plan, Inspire, Create had become a little bit disjointed with where the business had grown to, and I do have a video talking all about why I did the rebrand, and I will link that down below if you're interested. But it was definitely the best decision I ever made, and I've not looked back from that really. And so while I am incredibly kind of grateful and nostalgic about the Plan, Inspire, Create beginnings, I can't imagine being anything else now than Sunshine Lane. Now, I will say that this is a very whistle-stop tour of how the business has evolved. Next week, I am going to be doing a video about the best decisions I made in my business, and I'll be expanding on why some of these things and others were the best steps I took along my business journey. So if you're not subscribed, subscribe to make sure you don't miss that video, because I think there'll be a lot of information you can take from it for your small business journey, and maybe new ideas to try. I think it's always good to learn from other people's experiences. I love doing it, and hopefully you can take something from it too. But that brings us to this year, which again has been a whirlwind of a year. I exhibited at my first trade show. I've actually done 3 this year. I closed my Patreon community that I opened back in 2021, which was a very big decision. But ultimately it came back to that feeling of trying to do it all at once, and I knew that I was spreading myself too thin and that something had to give. I couldn't keep expanding and adding on and adding on and adding on. Like, where were these extra hours coming from? And I had to recognise that underneath it all, I am still a person with a chronic health condition that needs to be able to look after themselves properly. And so I made the decision. My community was really understanding, as I knew they would be, and I closed the doors on the Cozy Cafe Patreon community, and it has allowed me to focus on other areas of my business and to create more regular product collections and so on. So it was definitely the right decision in hindsight, but it was a difficult and an emotional one to make, which again, I think I'll talk more about next week. I created my first Sunshine Lane character, Maple the Fox, which is something I want to do more of. I've also spoken about the reasons behind this in a video that I will link below, but it's a direction I would definitely like to take Sunshine Lane in moving forward, and I'm so pleased that there was a really lovely response to Maple and to the Cozy Bookish collection, which Maple was the star of, and that was really great to see that people were responding well to the kind of direction I want to take Sunshine Lane in moving forward. And then another huge step this year was that I hired my first employee. So my lovely mum now works for Sunshine Lane 2 days a week, and this has been immensely helpful, not only because I have been trying to keep expanding the business and there is only so much one person can do, but also because 4 weeks ago I became a mum. So life looks very different now, and when we talk about that work-life balance and all the reasons I started my business for, again, this is one. I'm not quite sure how things would have looked, but as it stands, I am the boss and I decide when I work, when I don't work. If my little girl needs me, I am there. I am still off, even though I am recording this video for you, but I am literally just doing odd hours when she's asleep, and that's kind of it at the moment because I'm able to take a step back whilst my mum is keeping orders going out the door and keeping things moving forward. I also do little bits during nap time, and I really want to do a video for you on how I keep pushing my business forward when I've got small pockets of time and only one hand to use my phone with. I think that would be quite a fun video to do. So yeah, let me know in the comments if that's something you would like to see. But that was essentially a whistle-stop tour of Sunshine Lane over the last 5 years really, from when I started with the Plan, Inspire, Create YouTube channel to approaching kind of the 5-year anniversary of that, and having done all those different things over those years, as well as release whoever knows how many product collections, and just keep evolving my skills in YouTube video production, editing, in terms of my digital drawing, my product collections, how I produce products, my marketing and selling, social media, like all the things you have to learn to be a small business owner. Hiring my first employee, doing payroll, doing bookkeeping, all the admin, all the unfun, unsexy stuff that goes along with running a small business. I've learned a hell of a lot over this time, and I really want to stop and think about 5 years on, where am I now and what has changed from the pretty bleak picture I painted in 2018 to 2019 before I started Plan, Inspire, Create / Sunshine Lane. So, I mean, I've definitely found purpose and direction in my life, and I have structure in my days. I am not a morning person, but my husband will say, like, I jump out of bed every morning and I am excited to get in my studio and crack on with the day. Obviously not so much now. I now jump out of bed and make bottles and play with toys on the floor and trash the living room and read stories. But while the structure of my day is changing and evolving, the fact is that I've created that structure for myself, and I am motivated, whatever that structure is, whether it's the old one or the new one. I am motivated to get out of bed and want to do it, which is a far cry from where I was at the beginning, when my mental and physical health was really bad. And I really feel a sense of purpose in bringing messages of self-care and positivity to people's everyday lives that really need to hear them. And I think we all really need to hear them. No matter what your story or circumstance, we all go through stresses and struggles and worries and periods of difficulty. And those things are the things we neglect, but actually the things we really need to prioritize. Like, I know all too well what happens when you put yourself at the bottom of your to-do list and you just don't focus on self-care. And that's why it's something that is so close to my heart, because I don't want to see myself in that situation again. It's why this video is 2 days late, in fact, because having had a couple of quite difficult days with a very emotional little lady who had a lot of teeth coming through in one go, I knew that the best thing wasn't to stay up until who knows what hour trying to push through to release a video on a deadline that I'd set for myself that actually I could move. So that's such a change from the person I was 5 years ago. I wouldn't have done that. I'd have pushed through and I'd have felt like a failure if I hadn't have done it. I found things that I'm passionate about and my self-esteem is higher. I think something my patrons really supported me with was feeding back to me that they could see my confidence growing over the weeks, months and years in those initial years of running my business, and encouraging me to look back at old videos and see the difference in myself. And I recently did this and I was actually quite shocked. Even just physically, to look at me, I can tell that I look brighter. When I look back at some of those early videos, I look so tired. And don't get me wrong, I look so tired in some of these recent videos, but I don't know, I can just see the difference in myself. I feel happier in myself as a person, and I'm proud of what I'm achieving, and I think that I can recognise it in myself, and I'm proud of that. And yeah, well, that sums that up. I'm not going to keep rambling on, giving myself compliments. My quality of life has improved through focusing on what matters to me most. So instead of trying to do it all and trying to do it all to 100% and then not being able to do that, because nobody can do that, but beating myself up because I felt like a failure, like that was a cycle that was really damaging. Whereas now, some things might have to drop at certain periods because you can't spin all the plates at the same time. But overall, I know that the bigger picture is being taken care of. I think some things have to come into the focus in different seasons of our lives. And right now, for me, it's obviously home and family, because we have a new child at home. And my role is evolving into mum overnight. And so that has to become the focus. And other things have to take a slight back seat. But I did the prep work before that to make sure it would be taken care of. You know, I keep things ticking over. I'll pick up the ball at other points. Like, I know that the big picture is being taken care of overall, and that I've learned how to prioritize and focus on what needs the focus at any given point in time. And I don't always get it right. None of us do. But I think I am so much better at it and at being kind to myself if some things haven't moved forward at a particular time. I think I'm a lot kinder to myself because I can say to myself, well, of course they haven't, because right now the priority is home and family. And therefore, hobbies, what are they? They are taking a back seat right now because other things need to be at the forefront, but it'll rebalance. That's what I tell myself. And also, I can recognise that I am moving forward at a pace that feels comfortable to me, so I don't feel panicked that things are running away with themselves and that I can't keep up, because I set the pace and I feel a lot more in control of my own life, which is something I didn't really feel before, and that is a really great feeling. It is your life at the end of the day. You should feel in control of it, and I think being a small business owner has given me that, even though there are days where I have worked a silly amount of hours and I've had to push through and do the things that I think, didn't you give up employment not to do this, like traditional employment? But across the board, the big picture is that I have a lot more control over things, and yeah, it's very empowering. And whereas before I probably saw myself as Emma, social worker, rest of identity was uncertain, I now have a much clearer idea of who I am, and I feel happy with the person I've got to know, which isn't something I would have said, absolutely not, because being undiagnosed autistic and having poor mental health, I didn't have a great opinion of myself 5 years ago. But I've really put the time and effort into getting to know who I am and what I enjoy, and I actually like the person I've gotten to know, which makes me feel emotional to say every time. Every time I talk about being autistic and I say that, it makes me feel emotional, but I'm Emma. I am a planner nerd, I'm a stationery lover, love me a good bit of stationery, have too many notebooks if you can. Can you? No, you can't. I am a proud dog mum, now proud baby mum, which is also something I couldn't see in my life going back 5 years, because if you followed my journey, you will probably know it has been a journey to get to this point. I am a good wife, a good daughter, a good friend. I have more good friends in my life. I'm now a mum. I feel like I can give attention to those things and that they can get the attention they deserve amongst the other things in my life, rather than being on the back foot and me feeling like I was failing on those fronts. I'm autistic and proud of it. I understand myself more, and therefore I'm a lot kinder to myself with the things that I struggle with. I understand why I struggle with them, and I'm not harsh with myself about it in the same way, and I work with who I am instead of kind of fighting against it to make things easier for myself. I'm a lover of all things creative. I don't hold myself back in that way anymore with the kind of fear of failure. I just create for the sake of enjoyment. And it's led me to create so many wonderful things that have also brought joy to other people's lives, which is something that I'm really proud of, and that gives me the motivation to keep going and creating and doing what I do. And I'm a braver person. I'm willing to try new things. If I think of all the new things I've tried this year, like that you'll see in my vlogs, just business related even, if you'd have shown like these videos to the person 5 years ago, I'd have been like, no way, no way. You wouldn't be there. And there's always going to be other goals I've got, so I never quite feel that I've reached where I want to be, because whenever you're getting closer, you just set a new goal, and so the end point always moves. But if I think of everything I've achieved over the time, it is quite crazy to think like, yeah, I just did 3 trade shows this year, no big deal. Yeah, I just threw myself into that and gave it a go. You know, I've done some great collaborations with people, some product collections, products I'm proud of, product collections I'm proud of. I've really like given things a go and push myself to be brave and think, no, I'm going to try that. And sometimes I think, I'm not doing that again. And then other times I think, that's a thing. I like doing that. I'm going to do that again. And it's all just a learning process. But I never would have had any of these experiences had I not tried, which is something that I really held myself back from doing before. And so I guess this is a different kind of small business video in that I wanted to recognise a story of like how running a small business can change you as a person and impact all areas of your life, and not just the success or not, or lessons learned that I've had in business, because how it's impacted me as a person is something that, regardless of how long I do this for, will have a lifelong positive impact. The things I've learnt from it about myself and the way I've grown as a person, I will be forever grateful for. And that's not to say I think I'm going anywhere, because I don't, because I love what I do. But I just think sometimes this other side of what you gain from being a small business owner isn't talked about as much. And there's always a funny meme that I see doing the rounds that's like, I work 80 hours a week for myself because I really don't want to work 40 hours a week for another person or something like that. And sometimes that is so, so true. And I think particularly when it's just you and you have to be the jack of all trades and do all of it, like I said, there are those times where you push it. And obviously one major factor for me was being able to manage my health and well-being and actually practice what I preach. And there are some times where I really push my luck and I take on too many projects and I have to do really long days and I cry and I think, what have you done this for? And I pull myself together and I do it and I think, I'm not doing that again, and then I invariably do it again. But in the main, I am so much better at knowing my limitations, at looking after myself, at spotting the signs of, am I finding things more of a struggle mentally, physically? Are there signs of burnout creeping in? Do I actually need to clear the calendar today and just lie down? And being able to be there for yourself when you need it, and giving yourself permission to do that, is something I am so grateful for. Equally, being able to be there for your friends and family when they need you, being able to balance work life with the other areas of your life is such an amazing thing that I do not take for granted. And so I thank you all for supporting me on this journey. I really, really do, because you help me be able to do that and to be able to keep doing it. And it is something that I feel incredibly grateful for every day. And that is why I jump out of bed and want to do stuff. But I do just want to kind of end on the fact of how I can see that I've changed as a person over the last 5 years is something that I didn't anticipate. And I don't think people do anticipate when they think about starting a business. They don't necessarily think about going on this journey of personal growth. But I guarantee it's something that will happen for everyone who does run a small business, because it tests you in so many ways, but it gives to you in so many ways. And I just think it is an incredible thing to be able to try and do. And I am so, so grateful for all of it. And I hope, without being too sentimental about it, that my little girl, though she is 16 months and hasn't got a clue what on earth I'm talking about and what YouTube is and what this video is about, will see an example of someone having a dream and going for it and trying to do stuff that they think might be a success and that they enjoy, and trying to make a living out of something you enjoy. That would make me very, very happy, actually. Because if I think about the example I was setting by putting myself at the bottom of the list and not looking after myself whatsoever and burning myself out by focusing on just traditional employment and completely depleting myself of everything else to be able to do that, it wouldn't have been a great example at all. So I hope to be able to carry on spreading messages of self-care and positivity and the importance of it for the next 5 years and beyond. Like I said, do subscribe if you don't already, because not all my videos are this mushy. I have a lot of behind the scenes vlogs that I release every week, usually on a Wednesday, as well as business tips and tricks videos, tutorials, etc. Like the video if you like this video, I'd really appreciate it, and leave a comment. Let me know where you are in your small business journey. I would love to know. I would absolutely love to know, and what you think the biggest thing you've learned about yourself so far is from running your small business. I would absolutely love to know that, and to get a lovely discussion going about it in the comments. I just think it would be so wholesome. And I will see you next week, where I will be talking about the things I wish I'd done sooner in my business, the things that have been really successful in driving my business forward, which is going to be such an informative video. I'm going to be sharing all the tips. So see you then, take care, and join me next week. Bye everyone.